Normandy, which got its name from the Vikings, the Northmen, is located in the north of France and borders on Brittany in the west. The capital is Rouen. Normandy was once divided into Upper Normandy and Lower Normandy, at that time with the capital Caen. Other larger cities are Le Havre, Honfleur and Cherbourg. In culinary terms, Normandy is known far beyond its borders for its famous Calvados, apple brandy, cider and camembert cheese. In addition to the scenic beauty, such as the cliffs with the white chalk cliffs near Étretat, the Bayeux Tapestry, the house and garden of the Impressionist Claude Monet and the picturesque seaside resort of Deauville are also well worth a visit. Even Napoleon spent his vacation here. In many places in Normandy, you will be accompanied by the Seine, which flows into the English Channel and the North Sea at Le Havre. Take a few minutes' time and discover with us the 22 best places to visit in Normandy. If you like this video, please support the Travel Owl channel with a like, comment, or a subscription. Thank you. Winding alleyways, colorful half-timbered houses, countless churches and chapels, small boutiques, hidden street art and lots of culture. You shouldn't miss Rouen on your trip to Normandy. The cozy capital of Normandy, which once served as inspiration for many Impressionist painters, is the perfect destination for a relaxed city trip or as a stopover on a round trip through Normandy. Rouen was once one of the wealthiest cities in medieval Europe and the second largest city in France. However, those days are long gone. With around 100,000 inhabitants, Rouen is now so compact that you can easily explore the port city on foot. At the same time, the city is so rich in sights and culture that you won't get bored even after several days in the metropolis. The large market square is framed by magnificent half-timbered houses that seem to support each other. The smell of fresh coffee wafts from the many cafes and restaurants on the square. People sit outside, chatting and watching the children playing in the middle of the Place du Vieux Marché on the old foundations of the Saint-Sauveur Church, which was destroyed in 1793. A few meters away, traders and farmers offer their products for sale. A little away from the hustle and bustle, a stone column commemorates Joan of Arc. It was here in the middle of Rouen that the 19-year-old freedom fighter was tortured and burned at the stake. Léon-la-Forêt is a commune with a bit over 700 inhabitants in the Eure department, approximately 35 kilometers east of Rouen. It is one of the most beautiful villages in France. In the center, the half-timbered facades are lined up around the old market hall, where a small market is also held on Sundays. The village was first mentioned in documents between 1015 and 1026. William the Conqueror built a castle here. His son Henry I died there in 1135. The castle was destroyed in the 16th century. There was no destruction during the Second World War. Also worth mentioning, the composer Maurice Ravel lived here from 1917 to 1920, and Lyon La Forêt was the filming location for Madame Bovary by Jean Renoir in 1933 and Claude Chabrol in 1990. No matter which direction you come to Lyon La Forêt from, the central place Isaac Ben Serad with its impressive 18th century market hall is always the end point. The market hall is adorned with hanging baskets of flowers, as is the entire surrounding area. In front of it is a large square that is used by the various catering establishments, simply charming and cozy. Barfleur is a charming coastal town and is classified as one of the most beautiful villages in France. The village owes its classification to the numerous buildings made of grey-green granite that rise up along the streets and alleyways. Most of the houses are covered in slate and were built between the 17th and 19th centuries. The harbour of the 600-strong village on the English Channel coast welcomes you with a romantic flair. Old fishermen's cottages and restaurants can be found in the small bay, which surrounds a protected natural harbour. The fishermen meet in the bars and cafes and tell stories of their trips. The Barfleur Lighthouse stands on the tip of a headland. The coastal village of Barfleur experienced a heyday in the Middle Ages, when around 9,000 inhabitants lived in the town and merchant ships and fishing fleets were anchored in the harbour. The Romans already appreciated the location on the sheltered bay and used the village as a starting point for sea voyages to Britain. William the Conqueror is said to have set out from Barfleur in the 11th century on his campaign against England, which ended with a victory for the Norman Duke after the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Until the beginning of the 13th century, Barfleur was one of the most frequently used ports for crossing to England. In the 12th century, Richard the Lionheart used the port of Barfleur as the starting point for his crossing to England, where he was later crowned king. Vaux-le-Rose is a charming coastal village on the Alabaster coast, about 12 kilometers southwest of Dieppe. The village has about 550 inhabitants and is known for its picturesque old town, its beautiful beach of about 2 kilometers, which is surrounded by white chalk cliffs, as well as its culinary delights characterized by its location by the sea. Vaux-le-Rose is one of the most beautiful villages in France. Vaux-le-Rose is a labyrinth of winding alleyways and small squares. The houses are built of bricks, but also half-timbered, partly thatched, and decorated with flowers, and of course with the eponymous roses in almost every front garden. Vaux-le-Rose is known for having the shortest river in France at 1,149 meters, which gives the village a special charm. The village with its river, the Vaule, and the former mills there is a popular destination for painters and photographers. Also worth seeing is the Église Saint-Martin and, just outside, the ruins of the Saint-Nicolas and cross from the 16th century. The region is famous for its oysters, which are farmed in the Bay of Vaule. The village also has a number of restaurants serving fresh seafood and other regional dishes. Jumièges is one of the oldest monasteries in France. Saint Philibert, courtier of King Dagobert I, founded it in the Seine Valley in 654 AD. The monasteries cultivated fruit, apples, pears and cherries, on their large estates. The microclimate of the Seine Valley favors such crops to this day. In 841, the Vikings, who had sailed their boats up the Seine Valley as far as Paris, plundered the abbey. And a second time shortly afterwards. Only ruins remained of the Carolingian abbey, where the Bavarian Duke Tassilo had found shelter as a monk in the 9th century. The 900 monks and 1,600 servants who had lived and worked there at the time fled. Jumièges was not rebuilt until the 11th century. When the abbey church, Notre Dame of Jumièges, was consecrated, it was in the presence of the entire Norman nobility and the Norman Duke Guillaume. And thus in the presence of the descendants of the Vikings who had once destroyed it. The last monks left Jumièges during the French Revolution. Just a few years later, in 1793, it was sold to a timber merchant from Canteleu at a public auction. He used Jumièges as a quarry and had the lantern of the dome blown up. But the magic of Jumièges is still unique today. National poet Victor Hugo was absolutely right when he raved about Jumièges. It is the most beautiful ruin in France. Saint Therese of Lisieux was a nun of the Carmelite order who was born on January 2, 1873 in the Norman town of Alençon. She entered the Carmel of Lisieux at the age of 15 and from then on devoted her life to her faith and her fellow human beings. During her lifetime, her work was inconspicuous and manifested itself in small everyday gestures. After her death in Lisieux in 1897, Therese was venerated as a saint by many people. The nun wrote down her life story in a book that was published shortly after her death and became one of the most widely read religious writings in France. In 1923, Therese of Lisieux was beatified by Pope Pius XI, and 2 years later she was canonized. A basilica was built in her honor in Lisieux, which is one of the largest churches built in the 20th century. Every year, around 700,000 people make a pilgrimage to the town of Lisieux to pray in the Basilica of Saint Thérèse and ask for the saint's help. The church was built in the Neo-Byzantine style and consecrated in 1954. The basilica rises on a hill on the edge of the city center and has a cruciform ground plan. The building is crowned by a huge dome that spans the interface between the nave and transept. Artistic mosaics with scenes from the life of Saint Therese of Lisieux adorn the crypt. The bell tower with its 51 bronze bells rises away from the church building. Granville is a small town on the French Channel coast that was officially recognized as a seaside resort in 1979. The town with its 13,000 inhabitants was named a climatic health resort back in 1926 due to its clean sea air. Granville is located in the Manche department in the western part of the Cotentin Peninsula on a rocky cape. The town has a seaport from which ferries regularly depart for the offshore Chosi Islands and the British Channel island of Jersey. The colourful boats of local fishermen bob on the waves in the traditional fishing harbour, and modern sailing and motor yachts are moored in the marina. In the high season, the seaside resort is a hive of activity, which dies down in mid-September. The Granville Casino is located directly on the main beach, where you can try your luck at the roulette or blackjack table during your Normandy vacation. The beaches of Granville are the focus of leisure activities in the summer months. The extensive range of water sports on offer include surfing, sailing on small catamarans, swimming and diving. While the sandy and rocky beaches around the seaside resort are often crowded in the summer months, things are quieter and more tranquil in spring and fall. Boat trips to the offshore Chauzy Islands provide variety on a family vacation in Granville. The archipelago in the English Channel is made up of 22 small and large islands, only a few of which are inhabited. The islands are administratively part of Granville and are regularly visited by ferries. One of the most important events in the annual calendar of events is the Granville Carnival. It is one of the most colorful and dazzling events of its kind in the west of France and attracts more than 100,000 visitors to the small town every year. With a population of around 170,000, Le Havre is the largest metropolis in Normandy. The urban area extends along the right bank of the Seine, which forms numerous meanders just before it flows into the English Channel. The Atlantic port played an important role in the city's development. From the 19th century onwards, coffee, spices, tropical timber, and cotton from the French colonies entered the country via Le Havre. Maritime flair still characterizes the city on the Seine estuary today. Huge cruise ships and passenger ships on the transatlantic routes dock in the port. The painter Claude Monet immortalized the commercial port of Le Havre in 1872 in his painting Impression Soleil Levant. In 1944, the port city, which was occupied by German troops, was covered by a hail of bombs from Allied aircraft, which reduced large parts of the city to rubble. After the end of the Second World War, the city was rebuilt under the leadership of the visionary architect Auguste Perret. He succeeded in breathing new life into the port city on the English Channel with his extraordinary concrete architecture. The architect focused on clear structures, straight lines and the interplay of space and light. The concrete buildings shine in countless shades of color, and in 2005, the city center of Le Havre with its modern post-war architecture was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The ruins of the medieval castle Château-Gaillard stand on a rocky plateau on the banks of the Seine. It was built by the English king Richard the Lionheart, who sought to regain supremacy over Normandy after his return from the Third Crusade. Construction began in 1196 and the defensive fortress was completed just 18 months later. At the time, the defensive structure literally blocked the Seine and was surrounded by numerous fortified outposts and trenches. The English king had wooden posts placed in the middle of the river to prevent ships from passing through. The construction of the castle swallowed up a fifth of the state budget. The enormous sum underlines the importance of the fortress for Richard the Lionheart. Only the ruins of Château-Gaillard remain today, but they still give an impression of the fortified nature of the complex. Even today, the architecture gives an idea of how difficult it must have been for attackers to conquer the castle in the Middle Ages. The main castle rises well protected on a rocky cliff above the Seine and was only connected to the hinterland via a narrow entrance. The complex was surrounded by an outwork, which was secured by a moat. In the center of the chateau is a residential tower, which, thanks to the undulating structure of the masonry, offered no attack surface for cannonballs. The medieval fortress withstood numerous sieges over the centuries. Dieppe on the Alabaster coast of Normandy is an important trading and fishing port and also the oldest seaside resort in France. As early as the 19th century, aristocrats and celebrities came to Dieppe's baths to enjoy their French seaside vacation. The climb up the cliff of La Polle offers a wonderful view of the town and its harbour. The panorama from Dieppe Castle and the Boulevard de la Mer above it is no less impressive. Other sights include the picturesque Old Town, the Church of Saint-Jacques, the Grand Rue Shopping Street and the Place du Puy-Soleil. Dieppe is also famous for its works by local ivory carvers from the 16th, 19th centuries. The collection, Museum in the Château de Dieppe, is considered to be the most important of its kind in the world. One of the most valuable pieces is a three-master in which even the sails are carved from ivory. The reputation of Dieppe's ivory carvers was so legendary that they were entrusted with almost all the work at the court of Louis XIV. Alençon is the capital of the Orne department and is located on the southern edge of Normandy. It was once very famous for its lace and was therefore known throughout Europe. There is evidence of the existence of the city of Alençon as early as Roman times. In the 11th century, when the Normans secured their duchy to the south, the first fortified settlement was built here. This was later followed by the construction of a mighty castle. The town really came to economic prominence around 1650 when Madame La Perrière came up with an original lace. It was in no way inferior to the Venetian lace known at the time, but it was considerably cheaper to buy. Promoted by Jean-Baptiste Colbert, a royal manufactory was founded. As a result, more than 8,000 people worked in lace production. The Point d'Alençon lace was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2010. Alençon is also known as the birthplace of Saint Thérèse of Lisieux. She was born here on January 2, 1873. The Basilica of Notre Dame is the ideal starting point for a visit to the town. In the neighborhood is the Market Square, the Place de la Magdeleine, where you will also find the Maison d'Oza. The Office du Tourisme is also here. A walk through the Grand Rue, which also starts at the square, offers a view of many imposing townhouses. The seaside resort of Cabourg is located on the Côte Fleurie, known as the Flower Coast. Until the middle of the 19th century, the seaside resort was a sleepy little fishing village. This changed in 1854 when the Parisian businessman Henri de Rant-Marimbeau decided to build a seaside resort next to the former village. Cabourg was planned and laid out on the drawing board. In 1854, the first casino was built on the beach and hundreds of trees were planted along the avenues. One of the most famous guests of the time was the writer Marcel Proust, who stayed at the fashionable Grand Hotel every summer between 1907 and 1914. The Grand Hotel is a magnificent building in the style of Spa architecture and stands directly on the beach promenade. Next to it are Belle Époque villas with playful bay windows, Norman cottages with glazed verandas and half-timbered houses. Cabourg is located on Normandy's flowery coast, known for its long sandy beaches, and offers excellent conditions for a varied summer vacation. Children build sandcastles on the gently sloping beach and splash around in the water near the shore. The 4-kilometer-long beach is supervised during the season, and umbrellas, sun loungers and beach cabins can be hired at First Aid Post Number 4. Numerous water sports are available on the beach in Cabourg to keep you entertained during your Normandy vacation. Le Tréport is a small harbour town that is known as the gateway to Normandy. The town lies at the mouth of the river Brésil. Picardy begins on the other side of the riverbank. The landscape around Le Tréport is characterized by the massive cliffs of the Alabaster Coast. The town is wedged between limestone cliffs and the sea and derives its extraordinary charm from this location. The chalk cliffs in Le Tréport are the highest in Europe. You can reach the plateau above the town via a staircase or by taking the historic funicular. The funicular was opened in 1908 and is one of the landmarks of the port town, which has a population of around 5,200. The heart of Le Tréport beats to the rhythm of the tides. Since the town was founded in the 11th century, ebb and flow have determined the lives of the people. In the past, the inhabitants lived primarily from fishing until tourism became the most important source of income. Despite this, the number of fishing boats in the fishing port is still considerably high, and every day fully loaded fishing boats return to the port with their catch. In some places, time seems to have stood still in the narrow, winding streets of the harbour town. They run through the old town district of fishermen and rope makers, which extends below the church and the Cordeliers Quarter. Balconies and bay windows arch out of the houses above the alleyways, and green vines twine up the facades of the houses. Mont Saint-Michel impresses with its legendary silhouette, which is characterized by the abbey enthroned on the mountain. The first sacred building was commissioned as early as the 8th century, and construction of the monastery, which is still standing today, began in 1017. In the Middle Ages, the island experienced its first heyday as a popular pilgrimage site. The faithful flocked here in droves, and numerous children's pilgrimages had the island in Normandy as their destination. The abbey's writing room was known and appreciated far beyond the borders of the country. You can still see some remnants of this time in the island's museums today. During the 100 Years' War, the English enemies were never able to take the castle, as mighty walls protected the abbey and its inhabitants from invasion. During the French Revolution, the monastery was converted into a prison and was used to detain various opponents of the regime. It was not until Emperor Napoleon III had the village restored to the state it is in today. The island is now the third most visited place in the whole of France. As you can imagine, only the Eiffel Tower in Paris and the Palace of Versailles attract more visitors. Visitors from the USA in particular are always fascinated by the medieval history of Europe. The chalk cliffs of Etretat are undoubtedly the most beautiful part of the cliffs in Normandy. These impressive limestone cliffs and crags are at the heart of Etretat's natural beauty and are known worldwide for their unique shape and brilliant white. The rocks, cliffs and valleys in and around Etretat are the result of thousands of years of erosion by wind and water. The chalk cliffs of Etretat have inspired numerous artists and writers, including famous personalities such as Claude Monet. The extraordinary beauty of this cliff attracts tourists from all over the world who come to admire the landscape and hike along the cliff paths. Etretat is a popular destination for nature lovers, photographers and anyone who wants to explore the impressive coastal landscape of Normandy. The chalk cliffs of Etretat are spectacular geological formations on the cliffs of Normandy in France. They are made of chalk and flint and are known for their breathtaking beauty and unique shapes. The views are also phenomenal. Steep cliffs that rise abruptly at either end of the coast offer breathtaking views of the deep blue waters of the English Channel. The Allied landing on the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944 was to go down in history as the largest amphibious and airborne operation of all time. To this day, millions of visitors flock to the landing beaches to commemorate the soldiers who liberated occupied France. The Allied landing, planned during the Second World War under the code name Operation Neptune, took place on the night of June 5 to 6, 1944. With bombing raids from the air and at sea, tens of thousands of ships crossing the English Channel and the landing on the beaches of Normandy at dawn on D-Day, the Allies had one goal in mind: to establish an Allied bridgehead in northwestern Europe and open up a second front in the west. The Allied landings were the prelude to the famous Battle of Normandy. The operation was to last the entire month of June 1944 and finally end on June 30th. Each of the 5 landing beaches located close to each other has its own characteristic features. The landing beaches to be visited from west to east are Utah Beach and Omaha Beach, American Landing Section, Gold Beach, British Landing Section, Juno Beach, Canadian Landing Section, and Sword Beach, British-French Landing Section. The small town of Bayeux is located around 7 kilometers from the English Channel coast. With its romantic medieval town centre, it is one of the most visited places in the Lower Normandy region. The medieval town structures around Bayeux Cathedral have been almost completely preserved. The mighty church was consecrated in 1077 and has been rebuilt and extended several times over the centuries. The 3-nave cruciform basilica combines elements of Romanesque and Norman Gothic on its facade. The most important buildings and districts in the center of Bayeux include the 17th century town palace, the historic Tanners Quarter, and the old parish churches. The narrow streets are lined with pretty half-timbered houses from the 14th-16th centuries, which serve as residential buildings and house small stores and boutiques in their basements. One of the most important works of art from the Middle Ages is the famous Bayeux Tapestry. It was created in the second half of the 11th century as an elaborate embroidery and depicts detailed scenes from the campaign of conquest against England, which William the Conqueror ended victoriously with the Battle of Hastings in 1066. The tapestry is 68 meters long and consists of 58 individual scenes and several text passages. The wealth of detailed depictions of the campaign makes the tapestry one of the most important pictorial documents of the Middle Ages. The picturesque town of Honfleur, founded by the Normans, lies where the funnel of the Seine estuary opens up. In the 19th century, it was Impressionist painters such as Monet, Renoir, Cézanne, Pissarro and many others who cemented its reputation as an artistic town. The painter Eugene Boudin, famous for his paintings of coastal landscapes, was born in Honfleur. The Eugene Boudin Museum is dedicated to the artist himself and his contemporaries. Collections from everyday life in Normandy in the 18th and 19th centuries can also be admired. Numerous fishing boats and yachts bob about in the Old Basin, the old harbour built in the 17th century. Narrow, six-story houses are picturesquely reflected in the water and offer painters and photographers countless atmospheric motifs. The Lieutenant's, the remains of a fortification, rises up on the quay and watches over the old harbour basin with its corner towers. Two 17th-century salt warehouses are now used for art exhibitions. No less romantic than the old port is the St. Catherine district, which is just as inviting for a stroll. There, the 15th-century wooden church of the same name with its freestanding tower and twin naves attracts attention. To the east of the city, the 2.1-kilometer-long Pont de Normandie spans the funnel-shaped main estuary and several estuary arms of the Seine Delta. It is Europe's largest cable-stayed bridge with a main span of 856 meters. Giverny, a village with Impressionist charm. If there is one name that stands for Impressionism in itself, it is that of the village of Giverny, where Claude Monet settled in 1883 and created his beautiful gardens, which come to life every spring. Soon after he settled there, numerous painters, including many Americans, flocked to capture the light and study Monet's work in the midst of the landscapes that inspired the famous artist. Even today, Giverny has retained its soul, character and authenticity. Everywhere in the flowering streets and alleyways, the colorful houses are adorned with blue vines and wild grapes. Galleries and studios of painters, artists and creatives are lined up throughout the village, where a stroll is always inspiring. Claude Monet's house and gardens, which are a must-see, and the Impressionism Museum are the two main attractions when visiting this famous village. Deauville is a fashionable seaside resort with a large marina. It is located on the Côte Fleurie in Normandy and is only separated from the neighboring seaside resort of Trouville-sur-Mer by a narrow river. Designed on the drawing board in the mid-19th century in a lavish style, the extraordinary townhouses in Norman half-timbered style, crowned by the magnificent historic villas facing the sea and the four-star deluxe Hotel La Normandie Barrière, are sure to impress on a vacation in France by the sea. Many a high-end boutique from Paris has set up shop in the elegant cityscape. The spacious beach promenade running along the extensive sandy beach also exudes exclusivity. The partitions between the bathing huts honor the names of countless international stars who have enriched Deauville's Festival of American Film. Trouville-sur-Mer is a time-honored seaside resort in Normandy that grew out of a fishing village in the 19th century and is as popular as ever for French seaside vacations. There is a large sandy beach lined with a long promenade, an impressively long restaurant mile along the River La Touque, which flows into a harbour basin, an attractive old town and a fish market worth seeing with an almost overflowing offer. Incidentally, the river separates Trouville-sur-Mer from the fashionable neighbouring seaside resort of Deauville, so there are no limits to further exploration. At the tip of the French peninsula of Cotentin in the northwest of the country lies the town of Cherbourg, officially Cherbourg en Cotentin. It is nestled around the largest artificial harbour in Europe, which is an important architectural work from the 18th century. The lively seaside town attracts boat travellers and yacht captains around the clock. It also plays host to exciting sailing trips and cruise passengers. The transatlantic port and its Art Deco buildings are a sight in themselves. Cherbourg is also known as the home of the painter Jean-François Millet and the astronomer and botanist Emmanuel Liais. The French associate the town with the film Les Parapluies de Cherbourg, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. Catherine Deneuve graced the streets of the rainy city, where many umbrellas can still be found today. Cherbourg also boasts a long history. The Romans established a settlement here as early as the 4th century. Due to its location, it has always been surrounded by conflict, which explains the large fortifications. During your trip, you can follow the historical traces in an entertaining way. Thanks to its location on a peninsula, there are numerous dream beaches around Cherbourg. They are all sandy and affected by high and low tides. It is therefore important to find out about the current tides in advance. There are also many beautiful hiking and cycling trails along the coastline. The old town breathes 1,000 years of history. The town has its roots in an island built by the Normans as a fortress at the confluence of the rivers Orne and Odon. William the Conqueror, the town's most famous inhabitant, had the castle and 2 abbeys built here, the Abbaye aux Hommes and the Abbaye aux Dames. After the conquest of Normandy by the French crown, the English laid siege to the town in 1346 and 1417 and remained there until 1450. In the early summer of 1944, a fierce battle raged here between the Allied landing troops and the German occupiers. During this month, tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians lost their lives. The city was finally liberated on July 9, 1944. The new cityscape emerged around the preserved and restored historical buildings. With its buildings made of the region's light-colored sandstone and its parks, Caen is considered a green city. Student flair and numerous boutiques make the metropolis a magnet for visitors.